There comes a quiet moment when someone controlling finally sees something they never imagined possible. You have stepped back. You stopped chasing. You stopped explaining. You stopped pouring your energy into fixing what was broken. And that moment does not bring them peace. It pulls the ground out from under them. Instead of walking away quietly, their emotions start to spiral. Their feelings crash into each other. Their words become unpredictable. And before long, they reach for the most calculated move they have ever tried. What makes this final move so dangerous is that it never looks like a game. On the outside, it can look like a real change, a heartfelt apology, a flood of affection that fills your phone, maybe even a sudden crisis that seems to demand all your attention. But underneath that carefully built surface is something very different. Spotting this pattern early can save you months, maybe even years, of confusion and repeated heartbreak. If this feels familiar, drop a quick like so more people can recognize these moves before they get pulled back into the same trap. And tell me in the comments, have you ever watched someone's entire personality flip the second they realized they were losing their grip? The second a controlling person senses their emotional grip on you is slipping away, something quiet but powerful shifts inside them. This reaction is not born from love. It is not born from missing you in a deep, honest way. And it is not a sudden wish to repair what was broken. It comes from a much darker place, the fear of losing control over your feelings. For someone like this, emotional dominance is everything. They do not just want your attention. They want your reactions. They feed on your frustration. They feed on your guilt. They feed on your attempts to defend yourself. They feed on the endless explanations you keep giving. They even feed on the confusion that swirls in your head when they twist everything around. Every single emotion you show them becomes proof that they still matter. Every reaction tells them their power is still alive. It reassures them. But when you suddenly become emotionally unavailable, the whole dynamic flips. When you stop arguing, when you stop defending, when you stop letting their chaos decide whether you sleep peacefully at night, that hits them where it hurts most. It is a deep psychological blow. Their sense of being above you begins to crack. Somewhere inside, they believed you would always stay hooked. Through hope, through fear, through guilt, through loyalty. They believed that no matter how badly they behaved, they could always pull you back into the cycle. So when that invisible thread finally snaps, they are left facing something terrifying. They are facing becoming irrelevant. Becoming irrelevant to you is one of the worst things that can happen to a person like this. It threatens the very identity they have spent years building, an identity built on being the center of your emotional world. Your quiet indifference sends a message they have a hard time accepting. It tells them their games do not work anymore. Their tricks have lost their spark. Their power over your feelings has faded into the background. That is why their behavior often turns wild and inconsistent. One day they explode in anger. The next day they beg for reconciliation. They disappear for a while, then suddenly return with apologies. Affection. Big promises about how they have finally changed. Sometimes they try to hurt you out of spite. Sometimes they try to make you jealous. These behaviors look very different on the outside, but underneath, they all share the same goal. They want to make you feel something again. It does not matter what emotion it is. It can be love. It can be anger. It can be guilt or sadness or even hope. As long as you feel something, they still have a thread to pull. They still have a door to slip through. And that is the one thing they want right now. What scares them most is not your anger. It is your calm, your peace, your quiet refusal to react. Emotional detachment is the one force they cannot easily control. They can twist your empathy. They twist your guilt. They use your kindness against you. They use your deep wish to understand people. But when someone stays calm, stays emotionally grounded, and refuses to react on demand, the rules change completely. The moment you stop engaging, their usual tricks begin to fall apart. When you no longer feel the need to defend every fake accusation they throw at you. When you stop chasing closure that was never really there. When you stop trying to make sense of a story that never made sense to begin with. The whole story they were writing begins to fall apart. Your silence becomes louder than any argument you ever had with them. And the second they realize their influence is fading is usually the exact moment panic begins. That moment is the doorway to the most dangerous tactic they have ever pulled. It appears right when you are starting to heal. You are finally seeing the relationship for what it really was. You are noticing the patterns. You are rebuilding your confidence. You are strengthening your boundaries. You are reconnecting with the version of yourself that felt steady and stable. A controlling person notices this shift. They notice when you no longer react on impulse. They notice when logic slowly replaces emotional chaos. They can feel the difference when your peace no longer depends on them. That is when they pull out one final attempt to get back the control they just lost. It is not loud. It is not obvious. In fact, it is usually quiet enough to look completely real. It is carefully designed around everything they learned about you throughout the entire relationship. They know which words once softened your boundaries. They know the fears you whispered late at night. They remember the hopes you held on to. They remember the emotional wounds you revealed when you were at your most vulnerable. They know what once made you doubt yourself. They know what pulled you back after every painful round, so they use that knowledge with precision. Maybe they suddenly offer the apology you waited years to hear. Maybe they show unexpected vulnerability that pulls on your compassion. Maybe they create an emergency that makes you feel responsible for helping them. Or maybe they withdraw completely, leaving you wondering whether you misunderstood the whole thing. These strategies work because they aim straight at your strongest qualities. They count on your empathy, your loyalty, your kindness, your deep wish to resolve conflict. The important thing to understand is that someone like this does not suddenly transform when they feel you pulling away. What usually happens is they change their style. The manipulation is still there, but now it is wrapped in softer words, smoother behaviors, more convincing delivery. Their real goal is not to heal the relationship. Their real goal is to interrupt your healing. They want to disrupt the progress you fought so hard to make. They want to plant seeds of doubt. They want to weaken your confidence. They want to pull you back into the emotional fog where they have always held the upper hand. And that is what makes this final move so effective. It does not look like manipulation at all. It looks surprisingly like the very person you spent so long hoping they would finally become. What makes this final tactic so convincing is the brief glimpse it gives you. For a short moment, it looks like they finally understood the hurt they caused. It looks like growth. It looks like accountability. It looks like the breakthrough you spent years praying for. But underneath that appearance is something completely different. This is not real transformation. It is not emotional healing. It is a carefully built attempt to pull you back into a place where they once held all the emotional leverage. The goal is not to rebuild trust. The goal is to restore control. The timing is never accidental. These behaviors almost always appear when you have stopped reacting, when you have stopped chasing, when you have started reclaiming your emotional independence. The instant they sense you are no longer emotionally available, they start searching for any opening, any small crack, any tiny thread. That might reconnect you to the cycle. That is why so many people miss what is really happening. Once you emotionally detach, the balance of the whole relationship flips. For maybe the first time, they are no longer controlling the emotional weather. They are not directing every conversation. They are not shaping every decision. They are not deciding how you feel from one day to the next. Your calm becomes deeply unsettling to them. Your quiet speaks louder than any shouting match ever did. Your lack of urgency tells them they do not hold the same influence over your feelings anymore. And because they can no longer predict your reactions with confidence, they begin leaning on increasingly calculated strategies. One of the first roles they often slip into is the victim. Suddenly, they are overwhelmed, abandoned, misunderstood. They face one hardship after another. Their messages turn emotional, talking about how much they are suffering, how hard life has become, how painful their past has always been. Every single word is carefully pointed at your compassion. Every line is meant to wake up that part of you that feels responsible for other people's pain. If sympathy does not reopen the door, they slip into another version of themselves. Now they become the person who has supposedly changed. They talk about self-improvement, therapy, personal growth, finally understanding everything you tried to tell them. They begin saying the exact things you wanted to hear for months, maybe even years. Their words sound almost perfect. But notice the timing. These big realizations only arrive after you have started walking away. The transformation shows up right at the moment they are losing access to you. And if kindness, vulnerability, and promises still fail to pull you back, another mask slips on. This time they turn defensive, hostile, even openly confrontational. They accuse you of becoming heartless. They insist you have become selfish, uncaring, cruel. They rewrite the whole story of the relationship. They shift blame. They manufacture conflict just to force you into another conversation. The specific emotion they spark does not matter to them, whether it is guilt, anger, fear, frustration, or sadness. Every reaction gives them another opening to regain influence over you. That is why this tactic can feel so completely overwhelming. The constant shifts leave you wondering which version of them is real. One day they are apologetic, the next day they attack, then they are vulnerable again, then distant, then cold. That unpredictability keeps your mind spinning, searching for answers. Meanwhile, they are not really confused themselves. They are watching you, paying close attention to which emotional approach still affects you. They are testing every button they pressed before, hoping one of them still works. What you are seeing is not real change. It is not love. It is control fighting to survive. When you stop caring, the controlling person feels something that threatens their whole identity. Your emotional independence wounds them far more than any argument ever did. As long as you stayed emotionally invested, even through conflict, you kept giving them attention, validation, reassurance that they still mattered. Every explanation, every apology, every attempt to fix the relationship, it all fed their ego. It all fed their sense of self-importance. Once those reactions disappear, so does a major source of the validation they have been feeding on for a long time. That is when their behavior often gets even more dramatic. Their personality seems to flip from one moment to the next. At times, they are unexpectedly gentle, patient. Hours later, they become cold, dismissive, even openly cruel. Then suddenly, they look broken, remorseful, emotionally overwhelmed, as if they just had some huge breakthrough overnight. These dramatic shifts are not random emotional outbursts. They are carefully designed experiments. Each one is meant to figure out which version of themselves still has the power to reach you. A person like this constantly watches for feedback from you. Every response you give becomes information for them. They are looking for the mask that still opens the door. They may cry and tell you they cannot live without you. They may finally take responsibility for how they behaved. They may share painful childhood memories, unresolved trauma, hoping your empathy overrides your boundaries one more time. If compassion does not work, they push harder. They may become harsh, accusatory, emotionally distant, even intentionally shocking. Their main goal is to disrupt your emotional stability because uncertainty weakens confidence. And a confused person is far easier to influence than someone who feels grounded and certain. These emotional swings are powerful because they reach the deepest parts of your heart. They aim straight at your compassion, your hope, your loyalty, your deep belief that people can genuinely grow and change over time. Before long, you may find yourself questioning everything you once felt certain about. Maybe this time they really are telling the truth. Maybe they have actually changed. Maybe you are walking away just as they are becoming the person you always hoped they could be. That uncertainty is not happening by accident. It is exactly what they wanted. The constant shifts between affection and hostility are not random outbursts. They are deliberate attempts to figure out which emotional response still reaches you. Because what they really want is not mutual understanding. What they want is access. They are not searching for a healthy relationship. They are trying to regain control. Emotional inconsistency becomes one of their most effective tools. The confusion it creates makes you question your own instincts, doubts your own memories, reconsiders decisions that once felt completely clear and final. And the moment confusion steps inside, the door to your life begins to reopen. Once you spot this cycle, though, everything starts looking different. Their dramatic personality changes are not proof of overwhelming love. They are not proof of emotional growth. They are signs of pure panic. When a manipulative person realizes you are slipping out of their reach, their tricks do not get gentler. They get more refined, more careful, more intentional. Their priority is not rebuilding the relationship. Their priority is reclaiming influence over your life. They want to return you to the familiar cycle, the cycle where they controlled the emotional weather, the cycle where your mood depended on their approval, the cycle where your energy stayed focused on managing their reactions instead of protecting your own peace. What scares them most is not your absence. It is the loss of authority they once held over your thoughts, your emotions, your decisions. At this point, their behavior often becomes surprisingly strategic. They begin recreating moments that once made you feel deeply connected. They bring up cherished memories, private conversations, meaningful places, inside jokes that remind you of the happier days. They know the strong pull of nostalgia, so they use it on purpose. If those memories do not soften your resolve, they shift toward guilt instead. Suddenly, you get reminded of everything they supposedly did for you. They emphasize moments when they supported you, moments when they stood beside you, moments when they claimed to love you unconditionally. Those stories may be exaggerated, selectively remembered, even completely rewritten. But the goal stays the same. They want you doubting your own boundaries. Guilt is one of the strongest anchors they can use, because compassionate people naturally struggle with the idea of hurting someone else, even someone who has hurt them again and again. If guilt still does not open the connection, another strategy often appears: fear. Sometimes it is direct. Other times it is subtle enough that you barely notice it happening. They hint they are falling apart without you. They suggest you are the only one who truly understands them. They hint that something terrible might happen if you keep walking away. The message is always the same. You are responsible for keeping them emotionally stable. Ironically, that expectation usually comes from someone who rarely accepted responsibility for the emotional pain they caused you. What makes these tactics so dangerous is how carefully they are disguised. They rarely show up as manipulation. They show up as vulnerability. They look like honesty. They feel like emotional emergencies demanding your immediate attention. They create situations that make you feel needed all over again. And for someone who has spent years loving deeply, forgiving repeatedly, or trying to rescue others, that feeling is incredibly hard to resist. But underneath the surface, the goal stays the same. They are trying to interrupt your healing before it becomes permanent. They notice the confidence returning to your life. They see the clarity replacing the confusion. They can sense your boundaries becoming stronger. They can see your self-worth growing healthier by the day. And they understand something else very clearly. If they cannot disrupt that progress right now, they may never regain the influence they once enjoyed over you. That is why the manipulation often becomes far more intense during this stage. It is not because their love suddenly deepened. It is because their fear did. The emotional chaos they create is not accidental. It is one final effort to stop you from leaving with your confidence, your peace, and your emotional freedom all intact. If this hit home, share it with someone who needs to hear it before they fall back into the cycle. And if your story could help someone walk away faster, drop a comment below.